Good night, teacher. This is Camila from 3A, and today is Friday 22. So now I'm going to do the reading part. So I'm going to read the language of God. Oh no, I guess I did. Well, in uh, before I do it, in the previous audio, I used a lot of time. It's beautiful, but actually I think that maybe I should have used it is gorgeous sometimes, and I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to begin from right here. Yeah, chapter 2, the War of the World Viewers. So, if you start this book as a skeptic and you have managed to travel this far with me, not of a torrent of your own objections has begun to form. I certainly have had my own. Isn't God just a case of wishful thinking? Has a great deal of harm been done in the name of religion? How could a loving God permit suffering? How can a serious scientist accept the possibility of miracles? If you're a believer, perhaps the narrative in the first chapter offered some resonance, but almost certainly you, too, have areas where your faith conflicts with other challenges you face from yourself or those around you. Doubt is an unavoidable part of belief. In the words of Paul Tillich, doubt isn't the opposite of faith, it is an element of faith. In the case in favor of belief in God were utterly right, then were utterly airtight, then the world will be full of confident practitioners of a single faith. But imagine such a world where the opportunity to make a free choice about belief was taken away from the certainty of the evidence. How interesting would that be? For the skeptic, no, I know. For the skeptic and the believer alike, doubts come from many sources. One category involves perceiving conflicts of the claims of religious belief with scientific observations. Those concerns particularly prominent known in the field of biology and genetics are dealt with in subsequent chapters. Other concerns reside more within the philosophical realm of human experience, and those are the subject of this chapter. If you are not someone who is troubled by this, then feel free to turn to chapter 3. In addressing these philosophical issues, I speak mainly as a layman. Yet I am one who has shared these struggles, especially in the first year after I came to accept the existence of a God who cared about human beings. As a layman. Yet I am one who has shared these struggles, especially in the first year after I came to accept the existence of a God who cared about human beings. I was besieged by doubts from many directions. While these questions all seem very fresh and unanswerable upon their first arrival, I was comforted to learn that there were no objections on my list that had not been raised even more forcefully and articulately by others done through the centuries of greatest comfort. Many wonderful sources exist that provided compelling, compelling answers to these dilemmas. I will draw upon some of these authors in this chapter, supplemented by own thoughts and experiences. Many of the most accessible analyses came from the writings of my unfamiliar Oxford advisors. C.A.S. Lewis. While many objections could be considered here, I found four to be particularly vexing in those early days of newborn faith, and I believe these are among the top concerns faced by anyone considering a decision about belief in God. Isn't the idea of God just fulfillment? Is God really there? Or does the search for the existence of a supernatural being, so pervasive in all cultures, even studied, represented a universal but groundless human longing for something outside ourselves to give meaning to a meaningless life and take away the sting of death? While the search for the divine has somewhat crowded out in the modern times by our busy and overstimulated lives, it is still one of the most universal of human strivings. C.S. Lewis describes this phenomenon in his own life, in his wonderful book Surprised by Joy. And it is in and it is this sense of intense longing triggered in his life by something as simple as a few lines of poetry that he identifies as joy. He describes the experience as an unsatisfied desire, which is itself more desirable than any other satisfaction. I can really recall clearly some of those moments in my own life where this poignant sense of longing, feeling somewhere between pleasure and grief, caught me by surprise and caused me to wonder from whence came such strong emotion, and how might such an experience be recovered. As a boy, often I recall being transported by the experience of looking through the telescope that an amateur astronomer had placed on a high field at our farm, where I sensed the vastness of the universe and saw the craters on the moon and the magical diaphanous light of the Pleiades. At 15, I recall a Christmas Eve where the scans of a particularly beautiful Christmas carol, rising sweet and true above the more familiar tone, something I could not name. Much later, as an atheist graded student, I surprised myself by experiencing the same sense of awe and longing, this time mixed with a particularly deep sense of grief at the playing of the second movement of Beethoven's Third Symphony, the e- the erased, as the world grieved death of Israeli athletes killed by terrorists and the Olympics in 1972. The Berlin Philharmonic played the powerful strains of his C minor arrangement in the Olympic Stadium, mixing together nobility and tragedy, life and death. For a few moments, I was lifted out of my materialistic world into an undescribable spiritual dimension, an experience I found quite astonishing. More recently, for a scientist who occasionally is given the remarkable privilege of discovering something not previously known by men, there is a special kind of joy associated with such flashes of insight. Having perceived a glimmer of scientific truth, I find at once both a sense of satisfaction and a longing to understand some even greater truth. In such a moment, science becomes more than a process of discovery. It transports the scientist into an experience that defines defies a completely naturalistic explanation. So, what are we to make of these experiences? And what is this sensation of longing for something greater than ourselves? Is this only and no more than some combination of neurotransmitters landing on precisely the right receptors, setting off an electrical discharge deep in some part of the brain? Or is this like a moral law described in the preceding chapter, an enlightening of what lies beyond, and signpost placed deep within the human spirit, pointing toward something much grander than ourselves? The atheist view is as such longing and not to be trusted, as indication of the supernatural, and that our translation of those sensations of awe into a belief in God represent nothing more than wishful thinking, inventing an answer because we want it to be true. This particular view reached its widest audience in the writings of Sigmund Freud, who argued that wishes of God stem from early childhood experiences, writing in Totem and Taboo. Freud said psychoanalysis of individual human beings teaches us with quite special insistence that the God of each of them is formed in the likeness of his Father, that his personal relationship to God depends on the relation to his Father in the flesh, and oscillates and charges along with that relation, and at the bottom God is nothing other than an exiled Father. The problem with this wish fulfillment argument is that it does not accord with the character of the God of the major religions of the earth. In his elegant recent book, The Question of God, Armand Nicolai, Nicolai, I'm not pretty sure how to say it, a psychoanalytically trained Harvard professor, compares Freud's view with that of C.S. Lewis. Lewis argued that such wish fulfillment would likely give rise to a very different kind of God than the one described in the Bible. If we're looking for benevolent cuddling and indulgence, that's not what we find here. Instead, as we've been to come to grips with the existence of a moral law and our obvious inability to live up to it, we realize that we are in deep trouble and are potentially eternally separate from the author of that law. Furthermore, does not a child, as he or she grows up, experience ambivalent feelings toward parents, including a desire to be free? So why should wish fulfillment lead to a desire for God, as opposed to a desire for there to be no God? No God. So, well, anyways, finally, in a simple logical terms, in one allows the possibility that God is something humans might wish for. Does that rule out of the possibility that God is real? Absolutely not. The fact that I have wished for a loving wife does not now make her imaginary. The fact that the farmer wished for a rain does not make him question the reality of the subsequent downpour. In fact, one can turn this wishful thinking argument on its head. Why would such a universal and unlikely human hunger exist if it were not connected If it were not connected to some opportunity for fulfillment again, Lewis said it well. Creatures are not born with desires unless satisfaction for those desires exists. A baby feels hunger. Well, there is such a thing as food. A duckling wants to swim. Well, there is such a thing as water. Men feel sexual desire. Where there is such a thing as sex. Oh my god. If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. Could it be that this longing for the sacred, a universal and puzzling aspect of human experience, may not be wish fulfillment, but rather a pointer toward something beyond us? Why do we have to God-shaped vacuum in our hearts and minds unless it is meant to be fulfilled? And meant is meant to be filled. In our modern materialistic world, it is easy to lose sight of that sense of longing. In her wonderful collection of essays teaching us tone to talk, Annie Dillon speaks about that growing void. Now we're not longer primitive. Now the whole world seems not holy. We as people have moved from five themes to feign eight themes. It is difficult to undo our own damage and to recall to our presence that which we have asked to live. It is hard to discredit growth and change our mind. We thou said the burning bust and cannot rekindle it. We're lining matches in our vein under every green tree. Did we win to Did the wind used to cry and the hills shout from praise? Now speech and praise from among the lifeless things to the earth, to the earth. In living things that says very little to a few, and yet it could be that whether there is motion there is no noise, as when a whale reaches and smacks the water, and whether there is stillness, there is a small, still voice, God speaking from the whirlwind, nature's old song and dance. The show we drove from town. What have we been doing all these centuries but trying to call God back to the mountain? Or failing that, raise a peep out of anything that isn't us? What is the difference between a cathedral and a physics lab? Are they not both saying hello?